is repeating itself with the second Arab Spring. Is this a valid jihad? I recognize that there are so many amongst them in Syria today who genuinely and sincerely believe that they are fighting a legitimate jihad. And I have a duty to such people to explain to them and to do it in a nice way, that no, you are wrong, you are misguided. Hopefully that they will listen to these words. And I'm not the only one who is speaking to them. The Imam of Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, Sheikh Salahuddin al-Arafa, I think is his name, is speaking eloquently and forcefully on the subject in combating what is coming from Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi. If you see with only one eye, then you will be convinced, you will swallow the lie that this is a legitimate jihad. But if you see with two eyes and you're able to penetrate the reality of things, you'll recognize that no, it is not permissible to take $1 million. $1 million, that's what they're offering you, eh? $1 million to go fight in Syria? Is that the way we fight in jihad? Or do we rather say, give me a horse, give me a sword, and take care of my wife and my children? You don't have to pay me $1 million to go and fight the jihad. If you pay me $1 million, that's not a jihad, that's a Yankee jihad. And you're listening to me in Syria, and you know that what I'm speaking is the truth. A young woman wrote to me from Tunisia and said to me, my brother received 1 million Tunisian dinars to go and fight in Syria. And as he was leaving, the police caught him and brought him back to my father and handed him over. And handed over the 1 million Tunisian dinars, which is worth about 600 or 700 USD. 600,000 or 700,000 American dollars. You can buy a couple houses in Subanjaya with that. And my father took the money and locked him up in a room. And now he does not want to speak to any of us. I hope that young man will listen to my words. Surely he has this much common sense to know that you don't buy people. We're not up for sale. Not those who fight in the way of Allah in jihad. You can't buy us with $5. You can't buy us with $500. You can't buy us with $5 million because we are not up for sale. Say that to the paymasters who are spending millions and millions of dollars to buy, not mujahideen, they're buying mercenaries to go and fight in Syria. So the young man is now locked up in a room. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He's only reciting the Quran all the time. And the family contacted me. What can we do, Sheikh? You can't keep him locked up forever. If he insists that he wants to go in Syria and fight, and you explain to him that this is wrong, this is misguided, this is not a jihad, you can't keep him away. Let him go. But when he leaves, he will not return. You will not have any links with him after that. He's no longer a member of your family. Saudi Arabia, Libya, Qatar, Turkey are all in the Zionist camp. Is it so difficult for you to understand that? I hope you're listening to me in Syria. Saudi Arabia, Libya, now under Zionist rule, Qatar, Turkey, are all in the Zionist camp. Turkey is a member state of NATO. And these are the countries who are financing, and these are the countries who are supplying the weapons to you to go and fight. Is this a legitimate jihad, or is this a Zionist attack on Syria? Why is it so difficult for you to understand? You declare of those who oppose you and who are supporting the government of Syria in its opposition to the insurrectionists, that these are wajibul qatl, that it is legitimate for you to kill them. And you go to Syria and you kill these people. The price that you will pay for killing people for no just cause is the fire of Jahannam. If you die in the struggle, you are not shaheed. No. You go into the hellfire. And those who you kill, they are the ones who will be shuhada. And so we say, if you see with two eyes, you will recognize that this is a misguided effort. Libya, under the new regime, is sending weapons, and it is likely that high-tech weapons, which the Libyan army used to have, would find their way into Syria. NATO will say, we didn't send it, it came from Libya. As these high-tech weapons come into your hands and you start using them, there will be an escalation of the conflict in Syria. High-tech weapons are also going to come from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which seem to be hell-bent, doing everything they can possibly do to bring down the regime in Syria and make Syria another Libya. Perhaps this is a fulfillment, one more time, of the prophecy of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and I hope you're listening to me in Syria, because you know very well that Saudi Arabia is financing and Saudi Arabia is sending weapons. And Saudi Arabia is ruled by people who came from Najd. Saudi Arabia has Hijaz and has Najd. Hijaz is to the west and Najd is to the east. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is in Medina. And he says, Allahumma barik lana fi Shamina wa Yamanina. Oh Allah, put blessings for us in our Sham and our Yemen. And they asked, what about Najd? 3 times. And he said, from Najd, pointing in the direction of Najd, he said, from there would be the horns of Shaitan, Qarn Shaitan, and tribulations. And the rulers of Saudi Arabia today, the Saudi Wahhabi rulers of Saudi Arabia, are Najdi. He pointed to the east and he said, from there will come Qarn Shaitan, the horns of Satan. And so I ask of you, who say that you are waging a legitimate jihad in Syria today, can the horns of Satan be part of a legitimate jihad? Have you got no sense? Saudi Arabia is in this struggle up to its neck, the insurrection in Syria, and therefore the qarn of shaitan is involved in it. Qatar has suddenly risen up as a Zionist state. It is hosting Al Jazeera and the evidence mounts every day that Al Jazeera is a sister of CNN. Every time there's a Arab Spring, an insurrection or a rebellion or something, Al Jazeera is there to add fuel to the fire, to try to ensure that the struggle is successful and the Zionists achieve their objective. So the dust is no longer there in our eyes, and we can see plainly what Al Jazeera is, a Zionist front organization. Qatar was chosen, little Qatar, which yesterday was only taking care of sheep and goats and diving in the sea for pearls, is now hosting the 2022 World Cup. That could not have occurred without Zionist support, unless you are blind and you are taking money and you are taking weapons from Qatar, and you want to tell me this is a legitimate jihad? Turkey is a member of NATO, and Turkey as a NATO member supported the insurrection, the armed insurrection in Libya to overthrow the Gaddafi regime. And when they succeeded, the British Prime Minister and the French Prime Minister were the first to fly into Tripoli to congratulate the Zionists' success in Libya. And guess who followed them? It was the Turkish Prime Minister, to his eternal shame. To his eternal shame. He flew to Tripoli to congratulate them on their struggle, which had succeeded. And so now NATO is in control of Libya. And this is the same Turkish government which is now sending arms and sending weapons and sending men and financing on behalf of NATO and therefore on behalf of the Zionists, the insurrection in Syria. Since 1980, in the 1980s, Turkey established a military alliance with Israel. And that military alliance for military cooperation has continued from that day to this day. And Zionists around the world support Turkey and will not allow criticisms of Turkey, because they consider Turkey to be an ally of the State of Israel. But then came the flotilla to Gaza, and a high-profile attempt to break the blockade of Gaza 3 years ago. Malaysia was also involved in that. And the Israeli armed forces responded with a brutal attack in which 7 Turkish nationals were killed. The Turkish government then scaled down their diplomatic relations with Israel 3 years ago, demanded an apology and demanded compensation for the families of those who were killed, and demanded legal action against the soldiers, the men in the Israeli armed forces who did the work of killing. 3 years have passed, and now suddenly Obama goes to Jerusalem, sits down with Netanyahu, cook whatever pilau they cooked, or maybe biryani. And the next thing we hear is that Netanyahu telephones the Turkish Prime Minister and offers a rare apology. Israel never apologizes, no. A rare apology, and offers to pay compensation. And the Turkish Prime Minister graciously decides to drop the cases against the the Israeli armed forces, the legal cases. And so they've restored diplomatic relations at a high level. And the friendship between Turkey and Israel is now restored. And your jihad, your so-called jihad in Syria, is being supported up to its neck by Turkey, which is in friendly relations with Israel, and which has a military alliance with Israel, and which is a member state of NATO. And you cannot recognize that this is a bogus jihad? What more do I need to tell you? Why did Netanyahu call and apologize? Give me a little time and we'll explain that. Turkey also